Greetings. In this lesson, we'll continue our development and the modeling toolkit. We're going to use the combine tool to create a single mesh from two separate meshes. We'll talk about the bridge tool as well as the weld tool. The bridge tool is typically used to bridge edge to edge, and the weld tool is typically used to weld a vertex to vertex. So we'll bridge edges and weld vertexes. And then the fourth tool that we'll look at is the multi-cut, and we're going to be using the multi-cut in a very specific way, and that is to insert an edge loop. You'll hold down the control key to make the multi-cut tool into the insert edge loop tool, or a shortcut to the insert edge loop tool. Okay, let's get started with some warm-ups first. I'm going to go ahead and hide my spaceship. I've had the spaceship selected, and I clicked Made New Layer. I double-clicked the word and just typed in Ship Layer. Remember that layers at this point in the semester are basically just for being able to hide and unhide a selection. I will mention here or remind you we can template it, and that's the T. And if you hit R, it's referenced, and this is such a common common occurrence that a student will reference an object and forget that it's referenced, and then they'll not be able to select the object and be confused as to why they're unable to select the object. Always, if you're unable to, come over here and look in your layers, turn that reference off, and again, you can make the selection. So we'll hide that, and I'm just going to create a cube. Came in as a component. We'll switch to object, and I'm going to just scale that up a bit. And let's come to the modeling toolkit, and we'll start here with the multi-cut. I'm going to click the multi-cut, and without holding anything down, you can see that it'll allow you to cut across an object. At this point in the semester, we don't want to use the multi-cut in this default type. What we want to do is hold down the control key, and what you'll see is perpendicular to the edge that I have, that my cursor is sitting over, we get a loop. An edge that goes all the way around is called a loop. And if I put my cursor on this edge, right, we see that it's perpendicular the other way. That can be a little bit tricky to get the hang of, so take a moment and just play with, create a cube, select the multi-cut tool, hold down the control key, and get a sense of how that edge loop will lay down. Now when you're ready to set it, you just click once with your left mouse button. So now we've inserted a new edge all the way around. And I could set one here, right? And these are kind of just arbitrarily. I'll hit the 3 key to get a preview of how that would smooth. Come back to the 1 key. But these new edge loops were just arbitrarily placed. They weren't precise at all. So the next, I'm going to hit undo a couple of times, get that back, come back to the Q key or the select tool. It can be a problem if you leave the multi-cut on, then you're cutting when in fact you meant to be selecting. So be aware of what tool you have selected. This time I'm going to grab the multi-cut tool, and let's look down here at the multi-cut options. I believe the default is 10% increments. Let's make it a 50% increment, because this is what we're going to do when we cut our spaceship in half. I'll come out here, and again, the control key gets me into the insert edge loop mode, and this time I'm also going to hold the shift key. So you can see I'm holding the control key to engage the insert edge loop. I'm holding the shift key to engage the snap step. And here it's just 50%. I'll click with my left mouse button, and then I'll come here and click with my left mouse button. And now we've inserted an edge loop at 50% horizontally, 50% vertically. Once again, I'm going to come and pick my select tool so that I don't accidentally multi-cut again. And if we look here, 3, we've got a consistent smooth at 50% all the way around. Now what we'll be doing in the spaceship is coming in one of your orthographic views and just deleting one half. And this is a very common workflow where you'll work on one half and then when you're done, mirror it over to the other side. And that's what we'll be doing when we create the attachment for the spaceship wing. I'm going to right click and just delete that. So that was the multi-cut tool. Let's take a look at combining and then bridging edges or welding vertexes. We'll just make a cube here, scale this up a little bit, and I'm going to come edit, duplicate, and I'm going to slide this over, right? And I'm going to pick just a face that's in the direction of the other, and we'll hit extrude, our good old extrude tool. I'm going to pull that out, and I'm just going to scale this in. And once I've done that, I'm also going to delete that face. So because we're going to either bridge or weld, we don't want the facing face to be there any longer. I'll grab this face, hit extrude, we'll pull it out, maybe we'll scale it down a little bit, and then I'm going to hit delete. So if we look in the object mode, we've got, that's not a black face, that's an empty face, and that's empty. Those two faces have been deleted. Now, they're both separate objects at this point, and in order to use the bridge or weld, we have to combine them. So we'll select them both, come to combine, just click. And now if you click off and on, you see regardless of which one you pick, it's a singular object. It is a singular mesh with a gap. And so how we close that gap is the bridge or weld tools. Let's start first with the bridge. Note that we bridge edges. So I'll pick an edge, right? We've got that edge selected. I'll shift select the other edge. And then if we hit the bridge tool, you see that a new face is created. And I could go around and do that one at a time, but the more efficient way to do it, and you can practice that, but the more efficient way would be to double click. This gives me an edge loop. I'll dolly around, shift, double click. That gives me the other loop. I can hit the 4 key and really see that I've got those two edge loops selected. And then we'll hit bridge, and it bridges the gap all at once with a new set of faces. Give that a shot. Practice bridging edges one at a time, and practice bridging edges as edge loops. Next, we can weld vertexes, and let's look at the difference here. I'm going to come back to object mode, and I'm going to click on target weld. And let's start first with target. So our target weld options have target and center. Let's do it first as a target. If your vertexes didn't come on, you can right click and just choose vertex and they'll pop on. And this is a method of dragging and dropping. So I'm left clicking and I'm dragging to the vertex I want to weld and letting up with my left mouse button. And because it's target, it took the vertex over here and moved it. And these now have been welded together. This is a singular vertex. I'll do the same thing here. Left click. I'm not holding anything on the keyboard, just left click, and then dragging and dropping. We'll dolly around. Left click, drag and drop. This is now welded. Left click, drag and drop. So you can see with the weld method, it took this shape and stretched it over to fit there. Whereas when we were bridging, it gave us a new set of geometry, a new set of faces. In this case, when we're welding, we're dragging and dropping and the shape is extending to meet that weld. I'm going to hit undo and we'll just do it again, this time with center. So left click, drag and drop. And you see that little green dot there, it's showing you where 50% is, and it will meet in the middle. Left click, drag, drop, it's met in the middle. Left click, drag and drop, it's met in the middle. Left click, drag and drop. And there we have it, a singular object with the target weld center method. Practice those. create a couple of cubes or a couple of any of the primitives, combine them. You can then bridge edges using the shift method, and then you can target weld, where you use a drag and drop method between vertexes, and just note that you have the option between target and center. So spend some time doing that until you get used to these tools. It's typically too difficult to learn these tools in the spaceship context, so practice first, and then once you feel confident, we can build that little shape on the end of the wing. So I'm going to delete this. I'm going to bring back my ship layer, and let's execute movie number 5 in the playlist. We're going to say create polyprimitives cylinder, and we're going to make some changes to the default. So we're opening the dialog box, and we've said axis divisions 9. That's the number of faces around the cylinder. And then we're also going to choose the z-axis so that it's laying down facing, right, facing along the same axis direction as our spaceship. Now when I hit create, it doesn't look like anything happened. I can see here that poly cylinder is actually there. If I hit the 4 key, I'm going to make my panel active by clicking here, hit the 4 key, and we can see that that cylinder is actually in there and it's selected. So I'll just grab the move tool and pull it out. I'm going to hit the 5 key again to get back to shaded. And let's look straight down the middle. I'm in my front view, and I can see that this face and this face, they're nice and straight and parallel. So this is how we will bridge between them, or you could weld between them. We can bridge the edges, or we can weld the vertexes. Now, we are going to make this a little bit longer. Right, I'll pull that out and we'll make that longer. But if I just were to bridge the edges, let's say we just deleted these facing edges, or excuse me, we deleted these faces, then my wing would snap all the way out to the full length. Let's say we wanted this to be really long, right? We don't want our wing to come, let's imagine that we don't want our wing to come all the way, the full length of that cylinder. So this is when we will use the multi-cut tool as a shortcut to the insert edge loop. So I'm going to click multi-cut, and remember that the insert edge loop is the control key, and I'm holding the control key and I'm just sliding down and about where I want it, maybe there. And then I'll do another one, a second one, holding down the control key. I've got the multi-cut tool selected and I'll click it there. So now we've given ourselves a boundary, and I'll right click to object mode. I'll pick that face and delete it. A little bit hard to see here, but right, we can see that that face has been deleted. Not along the full length. We inserted these edge loops, and so now we have a nice tight rectangle about the same size as our end of the wing. I'll do the same on this, right? I want to select that and hit delete. These are two separate objects. If we come back and we can see I can pick the spaceship, I can pick this long cylinder, and they are separate. So if you played around in that warm-up, you know that we have to select both and hit the combine. If we click off, we can see that they are now a singular object, but there is this gap. And so now we can close the gap, bridging edges or welding vertexes. Just to review, I can pick one edge, shift select a second edge, and hit bridge. And so you see that gave us one additional face. I'm going to hit the undo key, and we'll double click the edge, shift, let me dolly around so you can see, we'll shift, double click that edge, hit the 4 key so that you can see. We've got the same number of edges. The bridge tool won't work if you have a selection with different numbers of edges. So we have 4 edges selected. And I'll hit bridge. And you see that it gave us a new set of faces. And if you like that shape, you could proceed. actually practice the vertex as well, and then you can decide, do you like the way that the wing looks having bridged to this new shape, or do you prefer the way that it looks with the weld method? I'll undo, and let's try that. I'm going to right click and come in. Now we're looking at vertexes. We'll come to target weld, and let me just show you quickly with center, if we want left click, drag and drop, left click, drag and drop, and you want to dolly around. It's very common to drag and drop onto the wrong vertice or vertex. Left click, drag and drop, left click, drag and drop. And so now, rather than having a new set of faces between the two, or previously two meshes, and have a new set of faces in the gap, it's simply extended. I'll undo that around, and you might like that one. And then our third option would be, again, target weld, but this time let's use center. My vertexes didn't pop up this time, so I'll manually right click and choose vertex. And of course, now when we drag and drop, it's meeting in the middle. And let's see how this shape turns out. Meeting in the middle, left click, drag and drop, and then left click, drag and drop. So that might be an interesting shape. Maybe that's the one that you want. We can hit the 3 key to see how that's going to smooth. And I actually prefer, I'm going to hit undo, get back into the 1 mode, and I'm going to say I prefer the target weld with target. We're going to right click vertex, and I'll very quickly just do this again. Drag and drop, left click, drag and drop, left click, drag and drop, left click, drag and drop. And I dragged and dropped onto the wrong one. I'll hit undo and just dolly around so I can see a little more clearly. Left click, drag and drop. So we've got this new piece. Let me really quick, and I'll speed this up. I'm going to just pick these faces, extrude, click the cube, scale it in, extrude, click, scale it in, and maybe pull it in, extrude, click the cube, scale it in, extrude, and maybe this one will pull out and scale it in. And we can hit the 3 key to see how that will smooth out very quickly. Do the same on the back. We'll just give it a little exhaust. Extrude, click the cube, scale it in. Oops, now I've made a bad selection here. I inadvertently selected that one, so we'll just hit undo. That's why it's a good idea to hit the 4 key, because in the 4 key I could see that I accidentally had this one selected. The control key allows me to deselect. So I held down the control key, drew a bounding box, and deselected. I'll hit extrude, hit the bounding box, hit the box, and we'll hit extrude, and I'm just going to pull this in and scale it down. And you can play around with that. It doesn't have to look exactly, but the basic topology, lots of questions about how closely it should follow. Follow as close as possible because these lessons are all using this same ship. You'll have opportunity during the second half of the semester to redo any of these projects in a very custom way. In fact, I'll encourage you to create custom versions, including a custom Polyship. But just for the sake of learning and being able to answer questions, it's better if we keep everything looking about the same. If you want to manipulate it a little bit, you can see that our ships probably all look different, but the topology is the same. Same number of edges, right? When we extruded that nose out, we made 3 divisions. We've got 1 extrusion here, 1 extrusion here. So the ship can look a little bit different, but it should have the same topology. Okay, now how do we get this onto the other side? This is when we will cut the poly in half and mirror it. This is a very common technique in modeling where you have a symmetrical or bilateral symmetry. You'll model 1/2, and then when you're done, mirror it over. Or it can also be a combination of going back and forth and doing that. But in order to delete 1/2 so that we can mirror this half over, we have to have an edge that goes down the middle. And this is where we'll also use the multi-cut tool, and we'll use the snap step at 50. I'm going to hold down the control key. Let me get around here. And let's pick it. I'm sorry, the object need to be selected in object mode. Hit the multi-cut, and here we go. So have the object selected, have the mesh selected in object mode, click on multi-cut. Right, you can see how it is laying down an edge loop all the way around perpendicular to the edge that you're on. So put it here, and we need it to be right in the middle. That's why we have 50% selected. And the option key is what gives me the insert edge loop, but it's the shift key that engages the snap. So you can see now that I'm holding the shift key, even though I'm moving my cursor around, it's only snapping at 50%. So I'll put that there and click, and now we have an edge loop running right down the middle. If your edge loop didn't go all the way around, the most likely reason is that you've got double extrusions. We talked about that at the beginning, how this face needs to be pulled away, right, so that it's not two faces sitting on each other. If there are two faces in the same place, the edge loop won't cut across it. So you'll have to go in there and find where those additional faces are, and then select them and delete them. Once you've done that, your edge loop will go all the way around. In order to delete this half, it's best to be in the orthographic view. I'm in the orthographic top view, right, using the space bar. If you lose the windows as you see them here, right, this is our 4 view. I'll click on that, tap the space bar on the top view, right click to choose faces. I'm going to draw a bounding box right all the way up to the central axis, and we'll simply hit delete. Take a look and make sure you didn't delete across the edge, across that central edge, the center edge. So we've just got 1/2 here. And our final step, in object mode, we're going to come up, and this will be in the negative X direction, right? We modeled Z forward. We have our wing on the positive X, and we'll come up to Mesh Mirror. I'm going to open the dialog box, Mesh Mirror, and it's, now our mirror direction is grayed out here. I'm going to hit Reset Settings. Anytime you come into a dialog box and something doesn't look the way that you'll see it in the video, just hit Reset Settings. I am typically this first semester trying to do everything with just the default settings. So I'd been working on a previous project, obviously, and had changed some things in the mirror settings. So first thing we'll do is hit Reset Settings. The mirror axis is X. It's going to be across the X, and it's going to be in the negative direction. Remember, the red line is facing in the positive. So if we wanted to go that way, that would be negative. So mirror axis X, mirror direction negative. I'm going to click that. It mirrored it over, and I'm going to show you just one thing. The merge threshold, probably best to put 0.01. In almost all of our mirroring, we'll want to use the merge threshold of 0.01. And later on in the semester, as we're doing some more sophisticated modeling, we'll come back and explain exactly what mirror threshold is. But for now, when you mirror, just go ahead and type in 0.01. I'll click off that. I'm going to hide my grid. And now we've got our new ship. We can look at what it's going to look like when we ultimately smooth it. But before we smooth it, while we still have it as a box model, in our next lesson, we'll talk about, in our next series of lessons, we'll talk about UV mapping, and then we'll also talk about animating the ship along a motion path. So those two in the upcoming weeks. All right, questions in the questions in the tech discussion. All right, have a good one.